brilliant statement.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Small Business Surgeon. Happy Monday! I hope everyone is doing fantastically this week. Guys, today I am joined by a lady who has fast become a friend of mine out to the Apex Network. Please welcome the mortgage queen herself, Miss Jill Underwood. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be sitting here with you today.
Hey man, it's been a while. I'm glad I've got you on. And you guys are going to realize throughout this show that Jill has one of the most infectious laughs in the business. See, there she goes again. I won't even mute it. So Jill, welcome to the show. So you are the mortgage queen. You are working on your first book. You're a podcaster as well. I don't even know where to begin with you. Tell us a little bit about the mortgage queen, and let's kind of unwrap your story as how you got there and a little bit of your past.
Well, I have not been the mortgage queen for very long, but my story goes way back to the 1980s, maybe even before then. My mother was a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a young teenager, waiting for mom to drive me around somewhere, I ended up sitting in her real estate office a lot. And I just watched and learned. So when I was 13 and 14 years old, she would teach me things about equity and
Mm-hmm.
negotiation and how to keep buyers and sellers happy. And, so to this day, my job is to keep people happy. But that's how I got in the real estate business and the mortgage business to begin with.
No way.
It was from my mother.
Well, I didn't know you had a background in real estate, so now this podcast is going to get even more interesting.
I actually was a licensed broker in the state of Texas for many, many years. I didn't actively full-time sell real estate, but what I did is I hung a lot of licenses from other people
Mm-hmm.
who were not, officially active full-time, but they
Right.
needed a place to hang their license. And the only reason why I got my broker's license to begin with is because mom and I wanted to have our own real estate office. And it was back in the day when buyer agency was first born.
Oh, right on.
Because there was a point in time where buyer agency was not a thing.
No, wow. So buyer side agency, for those that don't know, is what exactly? It's when a real estate agent represents a buyer and they get a percentage of the proceedings from the seller. And why was that not a thing in the 80s? And how did it become a thing in Texas? Because that to me is quite interesting. Because real estate in England, and I have English friends that have called me for counsel on real estate sales. Real estate in England has no buyer representation whatsoever. So how did that come about in Texas?
If I recall correctly, it started with an attorney. They, the commission, the realtor commissions
Mm-hmm.
are paid by the seller. And so therefore the real estate agents are legally bound in the seller's best interest. And if I recall the story correctly, as my mother described it, there was an attorney who realized this and decided that they wanted their own representation.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere along the way, buyer agency was born. And so what she and I wanted to do back then was to have a buyer agency company, because that was a thing. But it never materialized for us. Not sure why, but it didn't. But mom and I, we made a really good team together.
Mm-hmm.
Because she had so much knowledge and she was really, really good, with buyers and sellers on both sides. And I was her loan officer. So we did have that as a team together for
Oh,
many years.
you kept it all in the family, huh?
Well, husbands and wives do that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You see, me, I sell quite a bit of real estate. I've got a lot of buyer side clients. I get more joy out of buyers because I believe as an agent, it's my job to stand between the client and the deal. And on the sell side, there's a lot more stress, and on the buy side, there's a lot more excitement. And honestly, I like being a part of the excitement and the process and the joy. So I do go for buyers. And boy, if I had a partner that was a mortgage broker here in town, we do really well. Right now, I go with the most reliable, dependable mortgage brokers that do what they say and show up on time, and it's great. But they're all married to realtors. the female ones are married to male realtors, the male ones are married to female realtors, and I see exactly how it works. I mean, it's a great business model. It just, I don't really want to marry a loan officer, so what do I do?
You call me. I'm licensed in Texas.
I did not.
I do.
No, I did not.
I do a lot of business in Texas because
not.
I still have a lot of family and friends there.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah.
Well, there
Okay,
you go.
we'll talk offline. There it is. And I promise you won't have to marry me.
Good. I've got nothing. I'm not even touching that. Like, I don't
Another
know, man.
thing to edit out.
I don't know. Like, how many mortgages a year are we talking? Because there's that laugh again.
Oh my gosh, we are just hilarious today, aren't we?
Well, I hope that that the listeners are enjoying their Monday morning drive to work and enjoying listening to us laugh. But you just kind of make people feel naturally warm and comfortable around you. Is that something you've honed over time? Because my confidence didn't come until really in the last 3 or 4 years, I've got way better at sales and articulation and empathy. How did you generate that kind of warmth and almost the feeling like this is probably the 3rd or 4th time you and I have talked, and I feel like I've known you forever. I mean, that's obviously a skill set.
I think a lot of it did come from just hanging out so much with my mother. She was just like that. She just taught me that when you go to a party, you just talk to people. And I learned in my 20s to ask a relevant question to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And because ultimately people love to talk about themselves, right? And when you ask a question and they just talk to me and I just listen. And so I think it's just something that has grown in me over time. But you've got to realize too that in my job as the mortgage loan officer on the front lines, meeting with people face to face, I have to ask a lot of very personal questions.
Absolutely,
I kind of jokingly say that it's a financial colonoscopy, and I try to make it feel good. But it's true, right?
See, I would have said, well, this loan officer is going to crawl right up your ass, so... Goodness me, you're so much more eloquent than I am. A financial colonoscopy. Write that down, guys. That's what happens when you apply for a loan.
And I'm going to make it feel good. So
good Lord. What kind of show is this? Good Lord. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. But I will say though that honed over time, over many years, yes, my number one skill set is the ability to make people feel comfortable.
I mean, look at us. You've made me feel immensely comfortable, and
yay.
Well, thank you. But what advice do you have for somebody that's trying to do that? Because you want to sit there and ask people questions about themselves, and you want to kind of build a rapport and build a relationship. What's the best way you found to do that?
Throw the ball back fast. And what I mean by that is when you're in conversation with someone, especially someone new,
mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of times, especially in business, it's someone's nature to, yes, I'll ask them a question, listen, they give the answer, and then they ask me a question. And when someone asks me a question, I have a tendency to answer kind of quick and then throw the ball back to them and ask another question back of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because, and even to do this podcast right here with you asking me questions, it's so hard for me to talk about me because I'm always talking and I'm listening to others.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've learned in my trade, in my business, is to just toss it back and ask another question and take the eyes off of me, throw it back to you.
No, I can see that. I mean, you have your own podcast, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But this is your turn. Your time to tell your story. We want to know about Jill Underwood and how she got to where she's at. So, let's go back to the 80s, and you're working in real estate, and you're doing some sales. You're doing some mortgages. Were you more mortgages, more sales? How did you find your niche? And was it your passion at the time?
That is a great question. And I have a great story.
Let's go, man. I love stories.
I, when I got out of high school, I really didn't have the opportunity and didn't know how to do the big, let's go to university in a 4-year college.
Hmm.
So I went to night school at Richland Junior College. And I knew I wanted to get into real estate. And back then, you had to have a degree in real estate in order to get a broker's license. But what happened when I got to the real estate finance class, and it was taught by Sammy Gill. Sammy Gill was, of course, a friend of my mom,
Hmm.
and she was a senior vice president at Fort Worth Mortgage.
Okay.
And I loved the real estate finance class. And I loved it because I'm really good at math. And it was a lot of math. And it was a lot of, learning, the history of FHA, because I kind of like history. I'm kind of geeky
Yeah.
about things like that. And so in our circle in the class, everybody like cheated off of my test. And I just real estate finance just clicked with me. And when I handed my final exam into my professor, I said, will you hire me? And although I kind of blew the interview, she hired me anyway, I think as a favor to my mother.
Hmm.
And so what that told me is that I had to show up every day and work my ass off to make something of myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't ride on the coattails of my mother the rest of my life. And I started as a receptionist and I worked my way up the ladder. So every 6 months they promoted me. And so it took a couple of years and I became a loan officer. And I just fell in love with that because now I get to talk to people. I get to go out and see real estate agents.
Hmm.
I get to, teach realtors how to understand the mortgage business and what they need to know when they write their contracts. And it was like, that's my groove. That's my jam.
Yeah.
That's my gig.
Yeah.
And I've done it ever since. Right. But I love helping the people. There's nothing more gratifying than to have a person or a couple buying their first home
Hmm.
and they're so grateful and they cry and they laugh and they jump up and down. It just warms my heart every time.
I
And
love it.
that's why
Mhm.
I'm here, because there was one time I remember it just specifically. This woman, it was her first house, and I told her your loan's approved, and she was in my office. We're face to face, and I walked her to the lobby, and we said goodbye, and she closed the door, and I heard her outside of the door of my office jump up and down and scream
Hmm.
with delight, and I was like, "That's it. That's why I'm on this planet. That's
Yep.
it."
I mean, that's exactly the joy that I was talking about earlier in working with those kind of people, the people that are super, super excited to get their house. Maybe they didn't think they could buy a house, and maybe you're the mortgage expert that said, hey, actually, if we move this here and put this there, you know what, we can show a little bit of income here, and guess what, we can qualify you.
Yep.
And just
Yep.
the sheer joy. That's why I prefer buyer clients over sellers. And I've got a lot of realtors that'll argue with me on that, but it's my joy, and it's part of my core influences. So, talking of the word core, you made it sound very much like, as a young lady, you figured out the way to the top was hard work and showing up on time and being committed. How about you share a couple of your core values with us and let us know exactly what they've done for you in your career?
You have to always follow through with what you say you're going to do. You have to be consistent in making your calls. You have to know your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I know how to put a loan file together. I know my guidelines. I know my stuff. I don't just throw shit out there and see if it sticks to the wall. I know that when I tell you that you qualify and your loan is pre-approved, it's going to stick unless somebody dies or loses their job. When a real estate agent sees my name on the pre-approval letter, I want every realtor to know that Jill Underwood knows her stuff, and it's going to happen unless somebody dies or loses their job. That's I keep saying that because people ask me all the time, oh, Jill, we're scared to death. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you could die. And then that's kind of a disqualifier.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the core values for me, in answer to your question, is just you've got to show up and shine for your people.
I completely agree, because leaders lead from the front, man, So, all right, what's next? Where do we go from here? Because I know you've got a book coming out that you want to talk about. I know that you've got a podcast where you have guests, and I know a couple of other things too. So where would you like to take this conversation, my dear?
Well, but let's start with the book. The book is still
Yes.
really in the early stages, but it's a deep dive into the real estate and mortgage business. It's not just here's how to get a loan post-pandemic. No, it's deeper than that. I want to share with people some things like, everybody has bad things happen in life. We all have, I mean, people get cancer and they lose their jobs and, all kinds of things that can take you into a nosedive financially. And so part of my book, there's a section about how to come out of that,
Right.
how to come out of a foreclosure or a bankruptcy and rise up again. There's a section that I've got in there about geeky mortgage history. It's fascinating to me where we were in the 1980s and where we are today. And there realistically is a correlation between then and now. And so it's a deep dive into some just fascinating aspects of real estate. So I'm stoked about it. I think I'm a good 6 months out from anything major happening, but we have it outlined. I'm writing. I'm meeting with my editor. It's so cool to say, "Ooh, I have a book editor." That's really kind of cool for me. So because I love to write. So
Well,
this is the first of what will be many, many books of other topics as well.
man, I'm intrigued now because I obviously didn't know the topics of your book, but I'm very keen on the history of transactions and how we've managed to evolve those over time. And obviously, a lot of things you see in contracts today are the result of bad things happening in contracts prior to this. And I just happened to be in the British Museum one time in London, walking around just a few years ago, and there's a copper tablet in there, which is one of the they got it out of some ruins or some shit, 1200 BC, the first recorded evidence of a mortgage from a copper tablet. So I thought that was really, really cool. It's over at the British Museum. If you want to go deeper into the history of mortgages, I think that's where you start, right?
That's fascinating. That really is. That would be so cool to see.
So what's changed between the 80s and now? Like, what's so different about buying a house?
Fed policy, interest rates, values.
Were the
There's a
interest
huge-
rates in the 80s like as high as they say? Because I wasn't obviously
They were.
buying houses. What was a typical interest rate in the 80s?
18. This is kind of interesting. And I have this-
18%? How'd
yes.
you pay for the house? That's like
Well,
buying it on a credit card. Are you kidding me? Here, just swipe my Discover. It'll be fine.
Well, the maximum FHA loan amount back then was like 67,000-ish.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right.
Values were much lower then. But it's interesting. I have this chart. It's a correlation between interest rates and the national debt. So back then we have very low national debt and interest rates were very, very high. And it's an interesting chart. I'm going to have it in the book. It's prepared by MBS Highway. Thank you, Barry Habib. But what I did is I took the chart one step further and I put the pictures of the presidents at each timeline and who was president then, because there was a huge difference in the days of Jimmy Carter when we had high inflation and high rates. And then when President Reagan came behind him, and then we, completely changed the economics. And it's just things like that that'll be in there that are it's just interesting to me. It might not be interesting to anyone else.
What's interesting to me,
it could be completely fascinating, right?
Yeah, like I'm interested to know, right? Here's a question now, having come from that, right? Let's say, damn, I'm so out of touch with reality. Let's say the average let's say the average wage is a $5,000 a month take home, and let's say now the average mortgage payment is $1,500 a month, which is going to make it, you know, let's say $6,000. Then it makes it 25%. What's the difference between the mortgage payments in the 80s as opposed to the mortgage payments now? Is it still about 25% of their income, 30% of their income? What have we seen much escalation there?
We have seen a lot of escalation. Back then, it was a box. The guidelines were this little box, and you had to fit inside that box, and there was no getting out of the box, right? And back then it was 2836. The house payment could be no more than 28% of your gross monthly income, and the house payment plus your debt could not be anything more than 36% of your gross monthly income. And there was no wavering on that at all.
And there wasn't as much car financing back then either, was there? So people weren't carrying nearly as much consumer debt.
Well, cars back then were a lot cheaper.
They were cheaper.
If you had a car, your payment was maybe $80 a month.
Oh, I'd love that.
I know, right? I remember my dad had this car, and it was $80 a month, and he wanted to give it to me, and I was like, I can't afford $80 a month. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
So
Lord.
It's just, but everything is just completely different now in terms of the amount of revenue people make, the amount of wealth people have amassed. For example, here's another interesting thing about real estate. If you remember back in 2007, 2008, and that crash, a lot of what happened in that crash was because people were completely financed to the hilt, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
100% financing, 125% financing.
The houses were going up all the time. They're like, take some equity out, take some equity, go on vacation.
Yes,
here's a free loan.
Yeah,
right. I remember
and everybody, and everybody was financed up.
You know,
today, that's not going to, I don't see that happening. I should rearrange it. I don't foresee us getting into that again, because right now the amount of equity that people have in their properties is far greater. People on the average right now have about 30% equity in their properties as opposed to zero.
Is that to do with the inflation we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years?
I think it has to do with smarter consumers, personally. It also has to do with, we have different guidelines now.
Yes.
Guidelines change all the time. I have my guidelines books right here behind me, and I refer to them all the time.
I bet,
In answer to your question, where we were talking about the relationship between your payment and your income.
Yeah.
Right now, you can get approved with up to 50% debt versus income.
That's stout. That's pretty strong.
It can be. So,
yeah.
But it's a whole different world out there in terms of guidelines, Fed policy, interest rates, and people sometimes, rates, it's a 3% on a 30-year fixed. I've got one right now I'm fixing to do. It's like 2 1/8 on a 10-year.
That's practically free.
I know, right? And sometimes people will bitch about it. Jill, really? 3 1/8? Really? That's so high. No, 18 is high.
Yeah. Wow.
So we are very spoiled with interest rates right now. We're very spoiled.
Even in 2005, when I bought my first house, and my credit score was in the mid 7s, and my income was good, and we were approved for $330,000, and we were looking at $120,000 houses, which then now is probably the equivalent of probably a $250,000 starter home. And I remember my interest rate was 5.85%. We thought that was amazing. They'd given us the best deal ever, because back then it was 6-7%, and then 3 years later we refinanced to 3 1/8. And now we got more money spare. We got a cheaper payment, and we almost paid that house off before we sold it. So
yep.
But like from 2005, if that went on the market today, it would be worth probably double what we paid for it. it appreciated a lot, and that kind of concerns me a little bit. How do you feel about the inflation we're seeing? Sorry, and I know you're you're in Kansas, up near Kansas City, but yeah. So what do you feel? I was going to say you're up in Missouri, and then I realized I didn't know which side of the river you were on, and I definitely didn't want to offend you because I know those guys are really, really stuck about which side of the river they're on. Because Kansas City, believe it or not, is not in Kansas, which was a big shock to me when I showed up in Kansas City one time.
Well, there actually is. We've got this state line thing, and there's a road called State Line.
Yes.
And so actually, so this Kansas City, the city of Kansas City, there's actually a KCK and a KC Mo.
There you go.
So, but I'm in Lee Summit, Missouri, and I'm south of the river. But but anyway,
you don't fight with those guys.
The thing about values and the market that we're in this market where, multiple offers and, you got to pay 20,000 over asking and things like that. The thing about this market, in my opinion, is that it will correct itself at some point, but I don't necessarily see values declining. I think that right now it's just a matter of inventory.
Yeah.
It really is. We've got more buyers than ever. I mean, if you think about the home buyer, the kids that are in there, I say kids because I'm old enough to be their mother. The kids that are in their 30s saw that crash, and so they've been very young 30s, late 20s even. So they're very cautious with their money.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Even my daughter, who's 27, she remembers that crash because at the time she was in high school. And even during the crash, I still made a decent living, but my income dropped substantially. And I remember I couldn't pay for her tennis lessons. And it just mortified me that I couldn't pay for her tennis lessons. And then they said, Jill, she wants to be here. Just bring her anyway. We don't care if you pay us. And then I'm like crying because it's like they were so gracious. But my daughter has always been very cautious with her money because she saw the devastation that crash had for so many people. We were fine. We didn't lose our house, but so many people did.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and it was devastating for people.
Me personally, I was in the oil field at the time, in legal. And there was 85 or 90 people working out of our office, and every single one of us got laid off. I mean, I went from clearing at 28 years old, I was mid six figures, to nothing. And, the initial reaction was panic. It's, am I going to lose my house? What am I going to do? And, luckily, at the time, I'd got a little savings, and I was relatively sensible with my money. And I was one of the few that got to go back to work relatively quickly. I was only out of work for about 6 weeks. There were guys in 2008 that never went back to that career. And so I don't think that people today understand just the shock that was running through the entire economy in late 2008, January 2009. And that was caused by the collapse of Lehman Brothers really kicked it off. But for 90 people that all make mid 5 to mid 6 figures to get laid off overnight, and that was just one town, well, it was a small enough town to where that level of income, it affects the hotels and the people that work there, it affects the restaurants, it affects the bars, it affects the gas station, like absolutely everything. And I don't think that the kids, and I say that I'm 41, but like if you think the ones in the late teens and early 20s, they won't have any memory of that and how bad it was. And I think that it's funny, it correlates to the post-war generation in England. My parents grew up in the early 1950s, and there was still product rationing going on. So you got a whole generation of people now that are in their 60s and 70s that are scared to throw anything away still. My dad keeps bits of wire organized by length in certain trays because you never know when you might need a bit of wire. But it's not coming from him just not being unable to throw away wire. It's coming from the fact that they grew up to where they didn't know if they'd ever be any more wire. And I think we've seen that in that 25 to kind of 35-year-old range that were the kids and the teenagers, and when this was going on. I think they've got some kind of embedded memory within themselves.
Yep. And so much of it too comes from, back then when Bill Clinton had his original platform, and wanted to be president, his
Mhm.
original platform was that lenders were discriminating against too many people, and he was going to fix those lenders and everybody gets a house.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we all got called in for discrimination training. And
Yes.
that's where the pendulum really swung, where everybody got a house. That's where the stated income, it didn't matter what your credit score was. It didn't, just everybody got a house. And, I think for me, um, everybody doesn't necessarily get to have a house. It's like earned. You need a track record of being
Yes.
able to handle your finances properly in order to show that you can take care of a property and pay
Mhm.
your mortgage on time.
Yeah.
Back then, before that crash, there was so many bad loans going on, and people that just weren't really fitting any kind of guideline that made sense.
Hmm.
And we don't have that anymore. And the loan officers that are still in business today, we do play much more of an advisory role than, hey, let's just give you a mortgage just because I want to make a commission.
Right, right.
Most of the folks that are in my business now, we really want to make sure that you are getting put in a product and in a price point that does fit you. I have a lot of couples that we have conversations about, can they afford that on just one income?
Hmm.
And people are really just starting to be wiser about it. Even though price points are higher, incomes are also higher too.
Yeah, but I mean, that
So,
really is that's a very eye-opening conversation. Hey, me and my partner, we both make this much money, we can afford this much house. Hey, what happens if somebody gets laid off? What happens if somebody gets sick long term? What happens if somebody's laid up at the house? And those are questions that we don't always think about. So yeah, good call. You got this fiduciary responsibility over there going on,
yeah.
right?
And we do have that, whether you're a seller agent, buyer agent, or a loan officer. I have a fiduciary responsibility not only to the client that I'm serving to put them in a home,
Hmm.
but I also have this relationship with my employer as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I still have to do right by them.
Hmm.
And so when I turn in a loan and I'm writing out my notes to the underwriter, I will put in there just 100% of the time, I believe this loan is a good risk for our firm.
Right.
And if I can't write those words, then it is not a good deal for anybody. And it has to be a win-win-win all the way around.
Completely agree. Completely, because the last thing you want to do is write loans that may go bad. That damages your reputation, it damages your investors, it damages everything. So and then it ends up with a client unable to pay and getting kicked out and getting annoyed. So yeah, I could see that. All right, I want to ask you about a quote that I found on your Facebook page.
Uh-oh. Talk to me.
You'll know it as soon as I say it. It says, "The force of average is after you every day, my brothers and sisters," and that's attributable. I think I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there. I'm not sure how that word's said. But Ryan Stewman, founder of Break Free Academy, said that the force of average is after you every single day, my brothers and sisters. Tell me a little bit about how you discovered Break Free Academy and your journey through it and what it's done for your mindset and your business.
That is a great question. Interestingly enough, I have always, throughout my career, had some type of coaching program. My coaching days go way back, even in the 1980s. Pratt was his name. He was the first mortgage loan officer coach. But I've always, always, always had some type of coaching, but it was always about how to be a better loan officer.
Can I stop you right there? So Jill is telling us she has had coaching repeatedly over many years. I did not discover coaching until just a few years ago. And for me, it was life-changing. I wish, Jill, I discovered it at the same time as you. So anybody listening that's thinking about coaching, take it from Jill. It is the way to go. Take it from me. I wished I'd discovered it earlier. Sorry for interrupting your story, Jill. That is hugely important to me, that people understand how life-changing it can be to reach out to somebody and get an education in the things you're trying to do. Sorry about cutting you off there.
No, I actually appreciate that you did, because I never realized before how powerful and impactful all of that was to me in my career, but it kept me at the top of the producers charts for decades. It really did, because they always taught me how to be a better loan officer, different questions to ask, rephrase it this way. And that's probably going back to what we talked about earlier about I can ask questions of people and they just, blurt out their life story. But in answer to your question, so I've always had some type of coaching, and there came a point in my life a few years ago where I really wanted coaching outside of just being a loan officer, because I'm a really, really, really good loan officer, but I also I want some other business viewpoints of it, because I've been writing, but I'm not published. I have all these books inside my soul that aren't published. I'd been talking about doing a podcast for 3 years, but didn't know what to do. And so it was through some other coaching, and Jessica Stroud and I were in this other coaching program together.
She's wonderful.
And then, yes, she is. She's adorable. But she left, she went somewhere else. And then I followed her journey, and she ended up in Apex. And she had an event one day, and I showed up at her event, and I was like, can you please tell me about this Apex thing that you're in? I see this on I believe it was her Facebook. Yeah. And so since she and I had been in a different coaching program together, I was like, talk to me about
I should have made that connection, because I know you're in the same market. I never made that connection one bit.
Yeah. So she immediately, she texted Drewby and said, you need to talk to my friend Jill. And pow, here I am. And what I've learned from this group, because
what's it done for you? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's, I don't want to say, oh, it changed my life, but this has absolutely changed my damn life.
Changed mine. I mean, look at me. Look at us sitting on a podcast. You're like, how do I start a podcast? I don't know. Talk to your friends and record it.
And the thing about me that I know a lot of people are really surprised at is I'm really very shy at heart.
I don't believe that for a second.
I know, right? But but I could just sit at home alone and be just absolutely just a happy little camper. But I can't, right? So what I've had to learn is how to get rid of and shed that outer shell of wanting to just hunker down and be alone and, sing and write and listen to music. So what Apex has taught me is to lose the fear, lose the voices inside my head, to rewire those voices in my head.
Yeah.
And it's been so powerful, because I have a book editor, and I'm writing my book. I have a podcast, Little Tweaks, Giant Wins. Little Tweaks, Giant Wins is about just that. It's about having people come and tell their stories of the crap they've been through, how they got past it, and giving you inspiration so that you can make little tweaks in your life consistently that will, create giant wins for you to be better. That's really what it's about. Well, and then every other Monday, so twice a month, we do drop something in there. We call it Mortgage Queen Mondays. So it's a little snippet of something that can help you on the real estate side.
Well, while we're on the topic then, the littlest tweak that I've ever done that's given me the biggest win consistently is learning to understand that happiness came from gratitude, and practicing writing down things that I was grateful for. And I'm bad at this one because I do beat myself up a little bit, but then every evening reflecting on the wins for the day and what you've accomplished. What is your favorite little tweak that's led to your biggest win?
My biggest little tweak that's led to my biggest win. I've been tweaking for a really long time.
Do not say that in a police interview, okay? You good?
I'm going to rephrase. But but for me, I've tried to just be a little bit better every year,
Hmm.
just be a little bit better. But I'm gonna have to say that a lot of it is along the lines of gratitude. It's my reflection, my inner reflection. It's my conversations with God. It's being grateful for the fact that I'm vertical again today.
Yes. Yeah.
Every morning when I wake up, the first thing that I think in my brain is, what day is it? What's on my calendar? And it's true. But then I think to myself, I say my little prayer, and
Hmm.
and then I give my gratitude. I'm grateful for, I can look out the window. I'm great. Oh, it's a sunny day. I'm grateful for the sun. I'm grateful for the flowers. I'm grateful for my bed. I'm
Hmm.
grateful for my people and my tribe. And it's just the little things in life that I'm grateful for people. So much of what keeps me going is just, it's people. People are fascinating. And yeah, my tweak is just to try to be a little bit better every day. Try to help one more person. If I can just give my smile to one person who had a frown, then that was a big win.
I love it. And it's so simple. It's so
Yes.
simple. Have most people don't realize that you get what you put out. You get what you give. Have you ever tried walking down the street with a frown and seeing how many people frown at you? They'll all
No,
frown
I've never
back.
tried that. I just
But if I
it,
guarantee
yeah.
if you walk down the street and you smile at every single person, you're trying to give away that smile, you won't. Everybody will give it back. And just by making that one little tweak, it can really, really set up your attitude for the whole day.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm in a bad mood, I deliberately go and smile at people. Gotta sound like a serial killer, don't I? I go and
No, not at
smile at
all.
people. Yeah, no. Jesus Christ. I don't think I've laughed so much recording an episode of a podcast.
Oh my God, I love it. That's what we're
So,
here for.
I,
But here's the thing too, is,
uh,
a lot of people tell me, oh, Jill, there's no way that you are 61 and a half years old. Oh, I am every
what?
bit of 61 and
I
a half years old.
Well, I wouldn't believe it, but your Facebook profile tells me what year you graduated high school in. But looking
Right?
at you, no, I'm thinking like early 50s. But well done, wow.
Well, but people ask me my secret. What's my secret? Well, I've started my skincare routine since I was 20 years old,
Mhm.
but the rest of it, it's love and laughter. If I didn't have laughter in my life, I would not be just full of joy and love. We have to just dish out love there everywhere we go.
Well,
Just
that's how you get
love on
loved
your
back.
people.
Yeah, that's how you get it back. And to my never-ending shame, it took me 39 of my 41 years to discover that. I wish I'd found it earlier. Maybe I could use a skincare routine too. But so
Nice.
so yeah. All right, we're getting towards the end of this. We're not out of time yet, but we're getting there. I want to know a little bit now about what the future holds for Jill. What do you see happening in 6 or 8 months as this book comes out and this podcast grows? Where are you going, Jill?
My ideal world and where I want to be in 2 to 3 years is, I want to be more just actively running of the team,
Hmm.
and having loan officers underneath me to handle the day to day, the in and outs of physically working on the loans. I want to just be out there in the world connecting with people and
Hmm.
connecting people together. I want to have, and I have it a little mapped out, where this is step one. I really want to have a course or courses that I help young loan officers and young realtors to
Hmm.
learn this industry, because we have to teach the next generation how to sustain a 30 or 40-year career in this business.
Right.
And you do that with certain things, one of which is doing what's right for the client,
Hmm.
right? Doing what's right for the consumer, so that we put them in the right vehicles of real estate and mortgage. So I have an outline of a course. So I'm working on that. So that's what I want to be. I just want to be helping all the people, and help as many people as I can to make great decisions about their real estate and mortgage.
Man, that sounds incredible. That sounds, and don't lose that laugh either. You know, make sure that
Are you kidding? Never.
yeah. Make
I will say my man and I, we literally we wake up giggling and we fall asleep giggling. We just do.
is this
And if
before or
you
after you figure out what day it is and what's on your calendar?
which after I have to wake up slowly.
So Tuesday is funnier than Friday, or no? All right, I'll stop. I'm sorry.
Every day is just as we used to say, a barrel of monkeys. Every day is just love and laugh, love and laugh. And if you don't have that in your life, then please go find it, because that's what keeps you young and happy. And that's what makes our world go round. And I still put world peace on my Christmas wish list. I do.
Oh, that's just splendid. And normally I ask, you know, if Jill now could talk to Jill 20, 30 years ago, what would she say? But I think that last quote just covers it. You know, it's love and laughter, and you know, don't take it too seriously and put it out there, man. You know?
Yep, it is.
All right, Miss Jill. Tell the people listening where they can find you online, where they can follow you, and the name once again, of your amazing podcast.
Thank you. I am getting better. The podcast has surprised me quite a bit. My podcast is called Little Tweaks, Giant Wins, and I'm on all the podcast platforms. You can find me at my website at jillunderwood.com, and Facebook, I think it's Jill Marie Underwood.
It is Jill Marie Underwood. I'm looking at your Facebook page right now. That's where I got your that's where I got all this dirt on you. It's from Facebook.
Did you see my picture from 1979?
I did not.
Back Thursday today.
Oh no, I'm on the About Me page. Hold on, we're gonna go get that picture, and we'll put it up as your. Well, maybe we'll put that up for the show notes picture. But no, I'm on your About Me page. I'm doing the old stalking and stuff to do that. So
stalk me.
Yes.
Stalk me, baby.
Careful now. All right, so as we wrap this up, guys, do me a favor, go check out Jill's podcast, Little Tweaks, Giant Wins. You can find that over on iTunes and Spotify and all the places that cool podcasts are at, just like this one. Jill, you got an Instagram they can follow?
I am Jill Underwood.
I am Jill Underwood on Instagram. And while you're over there, do us a favor, follow our Instagram too. It's at Small Business Surgeon. Jill, thank you so much. That laugh, that smile. I'm gonna have to put the video out for this one, because I want everybody to see just what a wonderful, wonderful human being you are. You've been one of my favorite guests. So thank you for coming on. And guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. You'll have a wonderful week, a great Monday. And as always, if you've gotten anything out of this show, do me a favor, go follow us at Small Business Surgeon. Hit the subscribe button on iTunes, leave us a review, and do all that good stuff. Help a few more people to find the show and hear the message. I will see you guys Friday with another episode of Friday Fire. You'll be good, stay safe, and have a great week. That's it, man. Well done, Jill. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Let me just make sure this is quit and saved here real quick.